Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I'm your moderator, Jenny DeFoy. I'm also the Assistant Manager of Member Relations at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. So welcome. Our event today is a conversation with Bob Rennie. You're going to learn how he's survived the past and surviving the present of Metro Vancouver real estate and what his thoughts are on the market going forward. Those of you that are online veterans of our events, you're going to see that today's conversation is a little bit different. We've got Tracy McTavish, who's the executive director at Rennie. He's going to be interviewing Bob. He's going to help Bob share his thoughts on Metro Vancouver's real estate. And then the interview will be followed by a Q&A period. So we'd like you to hold your questions, please, until then. Once we open up the Q&A period, you can type your questions in that Q&A section that's found at the bottom of your screen. So please try to keep your questions clear and concise so that we know the kind of information that you're looking for. All right. And as I said, we've got Tracy McTavish here. He's going to be interviewing Bob. He's one of Bob's dearest friends. I'd like to introduce him, though, because not all of you will be familiar with his name, but he's certainly not new to real estate. He's the executive director, as I said, of Rennie, and he's had a successful real estate career spanning more than 40 years. His experience includes real estate sales, brokerage ownership, vice president of sales and marketing at Concord Pacific before pivoting to Rennie. So over his 17-year tenure at Rennie, along with his Concord projects, Tracy's been instrumental in the design, marketing, and sales of over 25,000 homes. His contributions, expertise, and vision have benefited the evolution of Vancouver as a city. And so before that conversation begins, I want to make sure that everybody really understands who Bob is. Bob has been around in real estate for 46 years. Well, let me correct that. He's been a member of the real estate board for 46 years. He's the founder and executive director of the Rennie Group of Companies. And I don't want to embarrass him, but there's stuff you should know if you're not already familiar with Bob. It's impressive to say that he's received the Order of British Columbia. He's only one of 377 people in the province to have received this. And that's because of his contributions back to the province. The Rennie brand has also helped redefine the business of real estate, offering specialized sales, marketing intelligence, and information and technology services in our industry. Rennie's notable developments include the reset of the amazing Olympic Village and Woodward communities, along with the revitalization and smart growth of neighborhoods throughout our region, like Marine Gateway, Strathcona Village, and Hub Community in Surrey. Like I said, he's been a busy guy. In addition to his work in real estate, Bob is also involved in various philanthropic initiatives focused on mental health and education. He's also an active voice in and a member of the arts. He's participating on numerous boards and executive committees around the world. So on behalf of the Real Estate Board, we're so very grateful. Welcome, Bob. And Tracy, he's all yours now.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to say thanks, Jenny, and certainly thanks Cheryl Funston for organizing all this. We're like a couple of cats, hard to herd, running around. I've been told there's almost 1,000 people on here. That in itself is I'm a bit awestruck, the fact that, Bob, you're probably setting records again by just a board event, but we have actually, and Bob being Mr. OCD, he's printed out his entire speech for me to cue from, which is 28 pages long. He, of course, has a little iPad. I'm going to just throw it to Bob. We're going to get right into it because there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to let you start, Bob, and I'll just jump in when I want to stop you.
Okay. First of all, thank you for showing up. Thank you for even having us on here. The funny side of it is my 46-year career has been reduced to 3 PPP credits.
I'm going to stop right there for a second. This was a free seminar, and it's 1 PDP, Bob. Your life has been distilled into 1 PDP.
Okay, well, embarrassing, but we're here. But you know, seriously, I love the industry, and I think this is the first time in 46 years I've ever done this. For the real estate board, and it's an honor. But when I was asked to do this, I thought 2 things. I've been sitting in this same spot in my family room since March 13th last year, when COVID raised its ugly head, and I've done all my Zoom calls from here. So I said to Cheryl and to Jeannie, let's do it from my family room. And the other thing is, I thought, why don't I have Tracy ask me questions? And I said to Tracy, put together 5, 6, 7 questions, and then let's just wing it. So there's some informality to this, and there's some organization, because Tracy, of course, gave me the questions, so could have proper answers and not waste anybody's time. But I think it's probably best to just turn this over to Tracy.
So just so we get into the questions, I wonder if you remember, you were sitting in this room back in March of 2020, just as COVID had hit, and we had decided to change the company around in reaction to that. Do you remember what you said to our staff at that time?
So as a joint decision, Tracy, myself, and Chris, my son, who runs the company, I think it took us 6 minutes to decide, and I put together a very short video prompted by Chris and Tracy and Greg, that let's send we have 110 staff, about 180 brokers, but the 110 staff will cover you for a year. We want to still be standing when we come outside of COVID, and so we sent everybody to work from home.
So not that message, the real message.
I'll go up. The message from sitting here was, I think that we make a mistake of looking too Teflon coated, all of us, and we should show our vulnerabilities. And so I think the message you're referring to is to that let people know that you don't have this figured out, and more important, as we had COVID and we're not touching each other and we're wiping everything down, if you can't shake someone's hand, let them know that you'd like to, and if you can't hug somebody, let them know that you really would like to hug them. And I think the other part of the message was call 6 people a day. Just reach out to people and let them know that you're vulnerable, so that they'll discuss their vulnerabilities, because one of our biggest resources is always relationships. So that's where this started. And so I just become, I'm very OCD that let's just do everything from my family room.
Okay, first question. So I think most people on this call probably know that you started at a young age, 19 years old, you got your real estate license. Why real estate? And why are you still licensed after 46 years, after all you've accomplished? And let's start with the 19-year-old story.
Yeah, I thought we'll get to the psychology of why I stay, or why any of us stay. But I came into this at 19. We were a very, very, I would say poor, but lower middle class family in East Vancouver. My dad was a truck driver. My mother was a waitress, and my mother called a Block Brothers agent. And for anybody under 40, you don't even know what Block Brothers is, but Block Brothers and NRS through the 70s and the 80s was equivalent to a RE/MAX type of organization of their day. And I watched as my mother made a chocolate cake and prepared coffee for this realtor that was coming over, because she was going to divorce my dad and sell the house and leave him for the 17th time. It's a whole other story. And I wish I knew the realtor's name. I doubt he's on here, because that's over 45 years ago, and he would have been 40 then. But he sat down and he drank coffee and ate cake and told my mother about 6 or 7 homes that sold in the neighborhood. And I'm 18 years old listening to this, and I really saw, as he talked about advertising, and I was a straight A student that got bored and just took art courses, and I quit school 3 months before graduation.
So why did you quit school?
I quit school because I was bored, but I went to my counselor in grade 12 3 months before, and I said, I have a job to go to. I had a job to go to actually in Sacramento. And I said, all we do is get drunk every night and party, so I'm not learning anything. Would you give me my grade 12? He said, Bob, without a trade, you'll be nothing. No. And actually, Selena Kai in our office hired a roofer. in the last couple of years. I would say pre-COVID because we mix everything up. He hired a roofer, and the roofer said to Selena, "Oh, you work with Bob." I was in his homeroom class when he came in to Mr. Tuchin and said, "I quit." And what Bob doesn't know is he closed the door and went to my locker to clear it out. Mr. Tuchin said to the class, "Young Bob just threw his life away." So, you know, in 1972, it was a lot easier to be that bold because the world gave you a break. They're not going to give you that break today. But that realtor that I saw at 18, I didn't know what to do. My friends were all taking jobs in shipyards, and I was actually hired with them, but I didn't want to go buy steel-toed boots when they all went to get it. So they made fun of me and I went home. But I sent away for my bartender's license. I thought that would be a nice social job, or my real estate license. And the application for a real estate license came first, and you needed a sponsor then to take the correspondence course. And I chose Block Brothers, and I would attend their meetings, and eventually was licensed.
So the way you told me the story was whatever came through the
Whatever came first.
When
My
you-
father
the
was
mail slot
going,
came
you have to
first.
get a job.
So whether it was the bartender's course or the real estate license course, it ended up being real estate license. What happens if the bartender's course had come through the door before?
I don't Cactus Club. I don't know. I'm driven. I actually, I said that line to Tracy last night. I just think it's funny. It's so arrogant. You know, water finds a place to go, and talent finds a place to go, and your drive will always find a place to go. So I would probably have a chain of bars or restaurants, but I do not like to sit still.
I think you should expand on the Block Brothers story, only because, and I apologize, I've known Bob for 40 years, I've been very good friends, so I know these stories, but there's always something that is worth passing along. And what I found interesting and very grounding in this instance is that as much as we've seen the success in Bob's life, at the beginning of his career, there was, I'll throw it to you on how the offices would decide who to take.
So at Block Brothers, there's a fellow named Wayne Gervin who was taking the course with me. And we would study in my parents' basement in East Vancouver. And Wayne would just boast about how he knew all these names, Abe Weeb and all these heavy hitters with Block Brothers that sold new homes. And he was, you know, we're both going to work for Block Brothers, wrote the course, and everybody was offered to join Block Brothers in the class except me. Because here I'm 19 years old and know nothing about business. And I phoned the manager and he just gave me the runaround. And so they wouldn't hire me. And then I went to Montreal Trust and they made me take an aptitude test and said that if I was ever going to come into the business, possibly a small office in a small town is all they could recommend. And then Canada Permanent Trust advertised, we will pay you $1,000 a month salary to a realtor. I know this is nothing to people listening, but $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. Well, I took the real estate course with Block. Somebody stood up and said they wanted to make $2,000 a year. And I thought, what an arrogant dick to say that you want to make that much money. And Canada Permanent Trust wouldn't pay me $1,000. And they sent me to meet a manager named Bus Norman. And Bus was so personable. He said, we can't give you the $1,000, but why don't I show you how to get to know the business? And he threw me a crisscross book, which listed addresses by phone number and said, start calling. And I did it for a few days and I hated it. I hated rejections.
I have to say, I've told this story before. I could never cold call. I couldn't take the rejection. It was just too much of a blow.
So I would hold opens for people in the office and I'd get to know people. And I became the little business guy to all my neighbors in East Vancouver and all my friends' parents. And I became that trusted voice. And I discovered direct mail. And I would send out 5,000 to 10,000 direct mail pieces on the heaviest paper cardstock you could buy in thermography with raised lettering and do it different than everybody else. And every home I sold or was involved in, I did that and it just built a business. I was very eager to learn the marketing side of real estate. early on. I used to measure my signs that if my name was 5 inches high, my name Bob Rennie went from edge to edge. I wanted to be a brand.
So why do you stay connected to the industry like you do at this level, 46 years later, after all you've accomplished? Why?
You know, I'll go through the history sort of chronologically of the company, but I want to make it to 50 years. When I came into Canada Permanent Trust office, I met Frank Caldwell, who had been in real estate for 25 years. My dad was a truck driver for 49 years. And I thought, I want this to be a career. And I'm going to look at it as long-term, and one day I'll be Frank Caldwell. So I really had the long-term goal, but at 46 years, I want to stay licensed. I want to keep taking these PDP courses so that I can stay licensed at least till 50 years. And it's just a marker that I want. But I also, I mean, we're hugely data-driven at Rennie, and we'll talk about it later where the market's going, but I think that we have lots more to contribute and lots more to do. And you know, Tracy and I are in the executive team of the company, sort of with offering oversight rather than all of the day-to-day, but I like to be in idea management, and I still enjoy the business.
How did you overcome the lack of education, 19 years old, walking into people's homes and describing to them what they need to do with their most valuable asset? Like, how did you overcome that?
I grew a beard. I'm still doing it now. I grew a beard so that and I had a ratty beard. It was horrible. But I grew a beard so that I would, it was actually hanging in the office so recently. I wanted to look older. But what I realized going into homes very early, and I'd pull out my mortgage amortization book. I mean, these are prehistoric tools that we used to sell real estate. And I would sit there and I would tell you what the interest rates were. You had no idea as a buyer or a seller. And I would explain the difference between a 20-year AM and a 25-year amortization. And they would listen. And I realized that I was only entitled to an opinion if I had data. And I would carry around 10 to 20 purchasers, and I didn't care how many homes they looked at because I was gaining market knowledge that other realtors weren't gaining. And I just became, I was a workaholic, but I wanted as much knowledge as possible. So what I saw with my insecurities of only being 19 and not having an education, I could overcome with having real data and real fact that I could inform and really make knowledgeable decisions. But on the why do I stay, you know, I think I border on desperation and wanting our business models to be relevant. So if I run through it chronologically, because that's by your questions, you forced me to do this over the last couple of days, is in 1975, I became a licensed realtor with Canada Permanent Trust. In 1979, I moved to a very progressive company then, United Realty, which was 100% house, where you pay to play and you have a deal fee,
Which was unique in its
yeah, and in the late 70s, this was a lot of pioneering going on. But I took my agent's license first because I didn't think I deserved to work for 100% house unless I had a broker's license. So I did that out at UBC, and I could tell the world I went to UBC. In 1988, we started Rennie and Associates, and we took that from 7 to 90 agents. And then we sold it to Jerry Jackman, who's a dear friend of a mortgage brokerage firm today. We sold it to Windermere Realty. But when we sold it to Windermere Realty and had a little building in East Vancouver, in Burnaby, 4701 East Hastings, I made them buy the building. And they bought the business, but they were only allowed to use my name for 2 years. Not knowing where I was going to go with the project marketing side, or would we ever be back in the brokerage business? And then Chris built the brokerage business up. But I wanted to focus on pre-sale marketing with a fellow named Dan Eulander, and we formed a company in the early 90s called Eulander Rennie Project Marketing. But I sit here and pretend it's me, Miyako, who was my wife then and the mother of my 3 children. Miyako's the one who went out and found an office and said, you're working 18, 20 hours a day, you're going to kill yourself. You have to grow. And she's the one that found the office and forced me to open a brokerage. I would have never done it, but I understood branding, and we risked, spent, lost about $20,000 a month for 2 years.
So that's $1988.
Yeah, you put that $1988, I could have been buying a house a month as a down payment.
Yeah.
Um,
You could have bought a 33-foot lot every 3 months. Every 90 days you could have
Yeah,
bought it.
for sure. But I wanted to build a brand. I wanted you to call Royal LePage, Canada Permanent Trust, or Rennie and Associates. But you got to remember, at that time I was selling 100 to 300 homes a year, so I had cash flow. It's not what everybody else would have done with it, but I just had this goal that I wanted to build a company and take the risk to see if I could do it. But it was easy to take those risks because Miyako was a dental technician and she had a day job that would support us and was instrumental in getting us here. But then when we formed Eulander Rennie Project Marketing, and Peter Ng and his family at Allied Group gave Dan Eulander and I a chance to do a pre-sale of 1188 Howe in 1992. And we sold out, I forget, 236 suites in 4 hours, and our life changed. All of a sudden we understood project marketing. And it's these little breaks in life that you don't know when they come along, but that came along. And Dan Eulander actually phoned me. We're going with this rabbit's hole. But Dan phoned me and said, come and look at Augusta Grove on the Burnaby Golf Course. We're going to take, Qualico owns it, and they want to take, there's 2 buildings, wood frame of rental, strata title, and offer them as condos. And I said, Dan, I do not sell condos. If it doesn't have land, I'm not interested. But my housekeeper at the time, Mariana, and her uncle says, you're just such a smart man, UBC professor, etc. Take me to show me. And I said to him, I said, oh, the 1 bedrooms should be $89,900 and the 2 bedrooms $109,900. And he said, Bob, that's $143 per square foot. No one's ever said over 121. I said, Dan, I don't even know what that means. But that's my guess where it would be. And we went to lunch, and he phoned me back and said I was going to hire Al Saunders of North Vancouver, but if you'll do it. And I thought, why not? And I had my almost house a day sales program going on with no assistants. And I thought, whoa, this is a breakthrough. And Dan changed my life. And I think I changed Dan's life. I somebody highly administrative and intellectual, and the marriage of me on the branding and creative side. And we just never looked back.
So at the peak of your career, you were selling a home a day. So roughly 365 homes a year.
I think I did that for 2 years, and I dined out on it the rest of my life.
And still, you were the #1 producer on the board for like a decade. You're reinventing yourself along this path. Was it instinctively you reinventing yourself? Was it by necessity? Because if you're selling that many homes on an annual basis, if it's not broken, why fix it? Like what told you to move in a different direction?
Well, so it's somewhere in these notes, but going back, so I decided very early that I needed a business model, and I found every 66-foot lot. This actually will answer the question. I found every 66-foot lot in East Vancouver, never understanding the West Side where the rich live. And I developed a mail program that I went to every 66-foot lot and soon became the expert. And I would list your 66-foot lot, go sell it to a builder and get a commission. He'd subdivide it, build 2 new Vancouver specials. I'd sell those and get a commission. And often you had a house to sell. So I invented this income stream. But there came a time as I met Dan that some of the larger homes we were doing in Burnaby, that my commissions weren't that much lower than what the builder was making. And I just started to see a model that maybe was going to be tough. And Dan came along, and I think all of us have to realize that, when a door opens, you don't have to kick it open, but you should look through it and just see what opportunity is on the other side. And if I look back, I didn't know it at the time, but we sort of reinvented ourselves every 5 or 6 years.
By choice?
By being opportunistic, I think. I think it was just, we wanted to do everything for money, but I just don't think that was the goal. So my ignorance of money sort of let me be a little more progressive.
So the viewers that are watching this, what should assuming the vast majority are obviously realtors, what should their takeaway be for their career? What should they be doing, looking at what they want to accomplish and what you've learned?
Yeah, this is probably later in the notes, but I found something in 66-foot lots and decided to do something better than anybody else and specialize. And I think that, one of our adages for the company and our Bobisms and sayings is we all survive in our similarities, but in the end, you're only going to be known for your differences. We all eat with a knife and fork, and we all are polite to each other, and social graces, but what is going to be different about you? And as soon as you get comfortable with that and not afraid to show it through. I mean, Tracy and I talked about this at breakfast this morning, that, I used to go see the builders at 6:30 in the morning when I know no other realtor would go, because I was going to have a 66-foot lot coming somewhere. I knew what was maybe coming. And I go for breakfast with them. And these are these big, burly Croatian and Italian jocks that are all talking about sports. And although my father ran the press box for the BC Lions and the Canucks and was deeply involved in sports world, I'm not a jock. I knew nothing about sports. But I could talk about players' incomes, and I could talk about franchises, and I could talk about the business aspects. And I found a way to fit in the conversation with not being embarrassed about being 19 with a bad beard and no education. I found a way to fit into the conversation, never making excuses. I would say I can't throw a ball, and they just laugh at me, but I became the junior little accountant guy.
Yeah.
And I just got comfortable with that's all I can do. So when they were talking about who are they going to invite to their hockey seats, they didn't include me because they knew I wasn't interested, and I didn't feel left out because I never pretended to be something that I'm not.
You're a stats guy, and in some of your notes, and you might have to go back to find this, you talk about income earnings and like the national average and people in the percentage of. I think it's important for people to have context of the ability for people to make money in real estate is obviously great. And it's the 80-20 rule, we all know that, but you've got some stats that are, I found it enlightening.
Yeah, I think we all forget the opportunity that we have. And being a realtor is probably the cheapest startup you could ever get involved in, other than the car that you're going to want to drive. But only 2%, I only found this out last week, only 2% of all Canadians earn over $185,000 a year. And only 10% of Canadians earn over $99,000 a year. So when you put that into perspective, we're in a very, very privileged environment. And I think sometimes that we start to think that the incomes available in our industry are very commonplace to everybody else. And the reason I've always liked, it's easier to be poor and become successful than it is to become successful and become poor, because you know what the other side of the tracks are like. And I've always tried to never lose perspective of that when people are scraping together, today $125,000 down payment to buy a 500 square foot condominium in Surrey, not in Vancouver. That money may come from parents and grandparents, part of it, but that is hard earned money. And sometimes we get very flippant with the amount of commissions and bonuses that are available to our industry.
So switching gears, that was the past, touching on that. Let's move to the present. A lot of people don't know that you have sort of a three-pronged attack of life. It's real estate, as we know. It is art for sure, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I've never understood the third part of it, and it's politics. So you've ventured down these three pathways to a great extent, had great success in all three. You've been on the Power 50 Vancouver magazine 15 times over the last 15 years. Clearly, you have influence in different silos within the industry and outside the industry. You've got a Rolodex, using an old term, but a contact list that has really created this opportunity.
I looked it up because I knew you were asking the question. I have 8,638 names in my contacts on my iPhone and 15 favorites. You're one of them.
I made
but I should talk about the Power 50 list. It's a Vancouver little thing. In 2006, the photographer for Vancouver magazine said to me, Ian Gillespie, West Bank, is going to be #1. So I go to Ian because for 22 years, we represented West Bank's sales and marketing. I said, Ian, you're going to be #1 on the Power 50 list. And Ian's going, oh, no, I don't want it. I said, you're going to be #1. The Power 50 list comes out and I'm #1. So I have to phone Ian and go, Ian, I had it from such a good source. And he was great about it and said, it doesn't matter. But what I did is I phoned the top 20 and apologized. I phoned Jim Pattison and said, there's no way that I should be #1. You're Jim Pattison. This isn't where we were going to go, but Jim Pattison has the same assistant, Maureen Chan, for 58 years. When I was in to see Jim, we've never done business. We just we have a respect for each other and share some business knowledge. This was a few years ago, and Jim Pattison, when he hired Glenn Clark, our former NDP premier, who's a good friend, he had just under 300 overweighty Save-On Food loyalty cards sent back because you hired this NDP guy. Maureen would phone I think it's 292, all 292, and go, I have Jim Pattison on the line. Jim Pattison would come on the phone. This is why Jim Pattison is, I guess, the richest man in BC. This is why he is what he is in his 90s. Jim Pattison would come on the line and go, hi, I'm Jim Pattison. They'd get over the, oh my God, or who the hell are you? And he would say that I understand you sent in your card because I've hired Glenn Clark and he is a strong NDP supporter. And they'd go, yes. And he'd go, well, do you know how the checkout girl votes? And they'd go, what? That's not even the right term, checkout girl. It should be checkout person. But how the checkout girl votes? And they'd go, no. And he goes, well, neither do I, but I still hired them. And he got back 95% of those cards. He doesn't need those people, but he protects his brand. And I've had the fortune to hear stories like that all the way through my life, and it influences me. And I think all of us on here have to realize that we don't know when we're in front of knowledge that we're going to carry it the rest of our life, and we probably realize it a few years later. But stay really curious and pay attention.
What about Mieko as an artist?
Okay, so the question was, let's go back to you asked about my 3 careers of real estate, art, and politics. So Mieko, we were married the month I turned 20 and Neko was an artist, and I started collecting art, but I was collecting with my ear. I was listening to who was buying the group of seven, what I should do, and I would take hard-earned money and put it into art. And I would hide art under the bed because Neko thought I was spending too much on it. And then in the early 90s, I decided that I want to collect art with my eye and with my heart and acquire art that deals with social justice, social injustice, not being seen, race, prejudice, and started to put a collection together and educate myself. And Tracy asked before we started, will we talk about the piece behind me? So behind me, arms spread, is from 1956. It's a drawing done by Charles White. Charles White is mentor to the greatest living Black artist, Kerry James Marshall, who we collect in depth. But Charles White, arms spread, this hung in a collector's home until about 5 years ago when it came to auction. And I've always wanted a Charles White drawing, but Oprah Winfrey would buy all of them. Why she didn't buy this one or wasn't in the room or I outbid her, I have no clue. But hands open, dropping everything in your hand, I'm here to talk, I'm here to embrace, is instrumental and foundational to the collection. But what's interesting about the drawing is in 1960, it was made into a poster, and it was the poster for the Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy March in Los Angeles. And so we like to sort of find that crossover. And then Tracy has always asked, why the hell are you involved in politics? But with a social conscience in art, it led me to elevate my social conscience in politics. We all sit and complain about our mayor and council. We all sit and complain about our premiers. We all sit and complain about Justin, but we don't get involved. And so just like I'm not entitled to an opinion in real estate unless I have data to back that opinion, I don't think we should be really complaining about our politicians unless we're involved somewhere along the line. But sort of my schizophrenic politics are, I back Jim Green, very far left of center. I felt the downtown east side and Woodwards needed revitalization, and he would be the guy. He didn't win because somebody entered the race named James Green and took part of his votes. Would he have won? We never know. But I actually spoke at Jim Green's memorial. I got this cleared by my Joy McPhail and other people that were closer to him. Jim actually died in my apartment at Woodwards. But I spoke at his memorial and I said, I had a dream last night that I'm carrying all these flowers and I'm walking through a cemetery and I couldn't find Jim's grave site. And then I came across two headstones. One was Jim Green, one was James Green. But we knew who should get the flowers. And it was to Jim. I said other things, but I can't repeat them or James Green might sue me as he tried. Okay. I'm wandering all over.
So I just want to circle back to the art world a little bit.
Before you do,
yes.
So the politics, so
yes.
The schizophrenicness. So I met with Christy Clark in 2012. And Christy Clark and I had a handshake agreement that she would give me $113 million if I would back her as head of fundraising. She gave me $113 million to build Emily Carr University. And I saw David Eby about 6 months after he was elected, and I said, congratulations. He said, for what? I said, I haven't seen you since you were elected. He's now our Minister of Housing. And I said, Christy gave me everything I wanted. And I think his eyes lit up like I got density for a developer or something. And I said, she gave me Emily Carr University. And I got out there and I don't think anybody could have raised more money for her. And for that time, she was the right person. And I really wanted to see Emily Carr University, our Center for Arts, built. So it was a payoff. But I'm very reluctant with partisan politics today, and I think that we should be cause-driven, and we should be supporting leaders that are fighting for the causes that we believe in, rather than, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm this, I'm that. So I've managed to go down that rocky road, but it is a fight to the middle, and we need to work really hard to bring left and right to talk together, or we're going to end up like America.
I agree.
So I've lost track.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
No, I want to circle back to art for a second. I'm going to make you talk about art a little more in depth, because I'm basing this off of at one point you now have your grade 12 equivalency, and you actually have a doctorate. So you've accomplished things along the way. But
I got my doctorate from Emily Carr before I went and raised the money.
just for clarity on that. But I think it's important for the viewers to understand where you lie in the art world. We know you locally as, and I hate the term, you hate the term, the condo king, and what you've accomplished in real estate is incredible.
Actually, Andrew Molnar sent me his family book the other day and said he's the real condo king, and I go, go for it.
You can have it. Maybe just explain your depth in the art world, because it gives context to what you view.
Look, I am, for Tate London, I am the president of Tate Americas. I'm a trustee at the Art Institute of Chicago and the school at the Art Institute of Chicago. And because of putting together a collection on social justice, and disproportionately, but on Black Lives Matter and African American artists, I became a bit of an authority on it. And so I sit on boards and I attend meetings and I sit in talks where I'm the only one on the call or at the meeting without a private jet. I'm the only one that works for a living, but we carry real estate knowledge. And similar to real estate, what I liked about art was, if you're a golfer, you have to take 5 hours off, and everybody gets mad if you're on the phone. But with art, I can get images, I can leave, I can make a phone call. I walk every morning and talk to art dealers and museums and curators around the world at 5 to 7 in the morning, when it's a convenient time for them. But I've managed to have a diversion of my energy while being in real estate, and somewhere to not just place money, but put attention, other than let's just buy bigger boats and planes. And
what about Chicago? Have you talked about Chicago?
yeah, Art Institute of Chicago is, I just gave the Art Institute of Chicago a painting of Barack Obama. I have a work by, this is so nonsense to use, but 6,600 books called The American Library, which I want to give to the Obama Library, but my condition is it has to be displayed at all times. It can't just go into the basement. So they're still raising money to build the Obama Library.
You're starting to geek out on art now.
Yeah, go.
So
get me out of it.
No, but I want to circle back. With your exposure globally through art, has it given you insight to real estate? Does it circle back, or is it just two separate entities that just plug along?
Everything circles back, because you get to understand disciplines, you get to understand, Berlin just bought back, I think, 60 apartment towers so that they could keep rents down for locals. Is this a wave or a trend of what's coming here? I mean, we're taking a sharp turn to the left. Anybody that thinks that we're going to go to the right it's not going to happen. So it gives you a world perspective. It also helps you understand the prices here, and where we've gone, and what a safe place it is to live here. But I don't know where we're going with this, but I think we can't just be known as realtors for making money. I think our friends, our associates, our doctors, our neighbors, they would love to have non-transactional relationships with us, where we always don't turn it around to talking about real estate, always talking about the last sale. If you go to a dinner party, everybody would love to touch on real estate, but I've always found, let's just talk about the humor sides of it. We do not need to go drill down at a dinner party. Nobody's asking the dentist to look at his teeth at the table, but everybody loves to talk about real estate. But I think that we benefit more from the non-transactional side.
So let me segue from that. So just for the viewers, what pre-COVID as a company, we would take our entire staff, which started at about 15 or 20 people, and we capped out at about 75 or 80 people our last trip. But we would go more or less on July 1st long weekend, and we would go to major cities in the United States and alternate with Las Vegas. It was bonding, it was exposure to culture, it was Bob integrating a little bit of art world into our office and just giving us insight into things that you probably wouldn't see in your normal day of life. And what was really interesting is we went to Seattle, one of the last trips, and we went to John Shirley's secretive lair of an incredibly expensive car collection, where we had to turn our phones off so no one could take pictures. And if they did, it didn't send off the signal to suggest where these cars existed. But there was a very telling conversation that Bob had with John Shirley in front of all of his employees. And I'm going to toss it to you.
So just to fill in the blank, so John Shirley, I consider everybody a dear friend. John Shirley's a good friend, and his wife Kim. So John Shirley was the first president of Microsoft and sat on the Microsoft board for 25 years afterwards. This is a different level of wealth. And when you're at John and Kim's house, when they talk about Bill, the neighbor, they're talking about Bill Gates. It's just another fascinating world. But I phoned John and I said, we're coming down to Seattle with 72, 75 people. And he goes, you want to see the house? And I go, no, they're not interested in art. Would you let us come and see the car collection? I mean, one car was $85 million. So this is $1 billion car collection. And he said, sure. And John drives up in an older yellow Ferrari and their dog and gets out. I don't know whether John's 78 or 82. I want to be kind to John. And everybody's around, and he's opening the door of $80 million car saying, sit in it. And then he steps up on a half stairway. And I said to John, John, we're here on a business trip. Can we not just talk about the cars? Talk a bit about business. And he gets up on the steps, and you could hear a pin drop. We're all around the cars. And he says, Bob said I should talk a bit about business in the early days of Microsoft. And he leans over and he says, Bob, what is it that you do? And for me, it was the greatest statement, because all of the company, all of Rennie saw that all of our relationships are not based on what we do, but it's the real relationships. And John and I have never done business. I don't think we ever would do business, but we have a very trusting relationship together. But the other thing that John told me is, previously I said, I'm going to fly down and I'm going to take the float plane that lands in Lake Union. And he said, oh, we put that in. We can't get employees into America anymore, so we house them in Vancouver. And that bit of knowledge and where we're going with real estate really was monumental to me, because it got me to really pay attention to what's going on in the post office and all the jobs that are coming.
So I just want to, that's another segue into, this is written down, I have to read this because I can't remember them all, but you have dabbled in the celebrity world at a certain level for different reasons. And again, it's usually through art or real estate, but we're in your home now. I have sat in this home and had dinner with John King from CNN, Chris Wallace from Fox, Bobby Kennedy Jr. was standing here and spoke to all of us. You interviewed Hillary, and that in itself was pretty cool, and you have some good stories. Maybe tell the Bobby Kennedy story.
Okay, so just we had Chris Wallace for dinner from Fox, but I'm not a Fox fan, but he did the best interview between Hillary and Trump. So we had him up here to do a talk. So I like to think of it more as intellect and celebrity, but something monumental happened in the house, and I want to paint red footsteps on the stairs at the other end of the house. Bobby Kennedy Jr. was in town talking about green energy and his investments in 10-year light bulbs and Tesla, etc. And I've been to lunch a couple times with Bobby, and we know each other enough to have cell phones numbers. I never want to promote these relationships further than they are, but we had about 100, 120 people back to the house, and he was going to talk. And, you know, it's David Suzuki and Elizabeth May, a very left-leaning group. And I said to Bobby Kennedy, I said, the Kennedys are on CNN this week. Why don't you let us peek under the tent? Everybody's here is green. Everybody understands what you're doing. He says, what do you want? I said, I know, let us just have a peek behind the curtain of the Kennedys. And so he stands up on the stairs and has an extremely raspy voice, and you could hear a pin drop. And the first thing he says is, maybe this 200-year experiment with democracy is over. And to hear a Kennedy say that, you go, fuck. This was about, you know, during Trump's reign. And then he sort of said, you know, Bob wants me to tell you a story. And he says, in about 2003, 2004, my best friend, Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Larry David's television wife, I've gone blank with her name, Cheryl Hines, is my wife. So there's a very tight relationship there. He said, so we take Larry David's plane, who made his money from Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. We take David's plane down in 2000, 2004 to a Democratic convention, and we meet this young man, Barack Obama. And we quite like him. And Barack Obama is going to fly up to Red Bluff on the Eastern Seaboard, which is a resort that is frequented and known for wealthy Black Americans. And so Larry David says, why don't we give you a ride up in the plane? So on the plane, Bobby Kennedy, wanting to impress Barack Obama and no sign of running for presidency yet, he says, you know, Tom, and I always get the name wrong, I think it's Oyama, but the leader of Kenya decided the only way they're going to get Kenya on its feet is to educate the youngest and brightest, and went to America and Canada and received 200 scholarships for Kenyans' brightest young men. Then went to a vice president, Richard Nixon, and said, this is sort of 1959-60, I need $200,000 to get these young men over here. And Nixon says, the last thing America needs is another poor Black man. No. And then he hears about the Kennedy Foundation, and this is Bobby Kennedy telling the story to Barack Obama. He hears about the Kennedy Foundation and goes to Joseph Kennedy and yet to be president, John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s uncle, says, I need $200,000. And they say, we'll give it to you, but we don't want you to talk about it because we don't want to lose JFK's chances in the South to become president eventually. And those 200 young men were flown over, and Barack Obama says to Bobby Kennedy Jr., well, how do you think my dad got here? And I don't tell it as eloquently as Bobby Kennedy Jr., but everybody's eyes filled up. And it's known as the Great Kenyan Airdrop. And no one had ever heard it. And we just never know where greatness or opportunity comes from. And I'm a pretty blessed guy to be able to tell these stories and come across these people. But what happened that night to me was even bigger. Is an hour before Bobby Kennedy and I were talking about let's peek behind the curtain, let's peek under the tent. He sat upstairs in Carrie's office, and his wife, Cheryl Hines, phoned and said, my 48-year-old brother just had a heart attack and died. And instead of Bobby Kennedy dropping the mic and going, I've got an early flight, I'm leaving, he stayed. And I walked him to the car and I said, Bobby, give me a hug. Give me a hug. And I said, seriously, you're Kennedy and you're different. He said, what? I said, you have a higher calling that anybody else would have left. Your brother-in-law just died. You've got Cheryl distraught, but you stayed, you socialized, you did your job. And I've had the opportunity to watch, you know, he's an anti-vaxxer. You can pick any reason why you don't like a guy, but to see how people answer their calling was just fascinating to me. Are we running out of time? I don't know what we're doing.
We're okay. Okay. I just want to now go back into the fact that you've been licensed 46 years. I've been licensed 41 years. That's almost 90 years in real estate.
It's 87.
But almost 90. Thanks, Rain Man. What's changed? What is going to change? Like, what do you see happening now and going forward in real estate? And
so, two old guys sitting here telling you how they used to do it. Well, I sort of went through the, you know, double ending is gone. We got here by double ending a lot of our own sales. Confidentiality is here and it's here to stay, and it's going to become much more onerous. Paperwork is enormous that we didn't have to go through. And everyone out there is far more litigious. But what hasn't changed is, you know, I said it earlier, becoming a realtor is still the cheapest startup that I know. But the business will always be about earning trust, and it's always going to be a relationship business. But the big difference I see from 46 years ago is I would arrive with that little dog-eared mortgage amortization book, and I would carry knowledge the public didn't have. Well, with internet and the social media, knowledge is readily available. So I think that as we come out of COVID, which is a whole other topic, you know, we almost got wiped out in 2008, then we see a pandemic, we almost lost it again, that a conservative side is coming into protecting what we have. And I think a relationship will get any of you to the table. But you're only going to be able to stay at the table if you can provide knowledge that they don't have. And which is why we have 12 people working in our Intel team and our tech team, so that any idea we have about any demographic, I mean, Andy Ramwell, our chief demographer, supplies Metro Vancouver's data to them. And having knowledge to underwrite your opinions is going to be very important, because if not, they're just getting it online and they won't need you. So I think that that's going to be the huge shift as we come out of this, that I forget who's saying it is, but it's not the return on my money, it's the return of my money I'm interested in. And I think as we move forward, that we're going to have to acknowledge that you running in better have some knowledge that the other broker running in to compete against you doesn't have. Your relationship gets you there, but they already know who their number two is, and we have to be careful.
what does it take to run Bob Rennie? Like, in your world today, you obviously have a support system in place. What does that take? It's just a bit of a peek under the tent.
I have a support system of Sylvia, which everybody in my life knows, and Chris Martin, who's sitting over there making sure that the battery doesn't die on the iPad. I'm extremely OCD, so I wrote it all down because I thought,
Your habits.
you know, let's go there. But I get up at 5:04 7 days a week. I have a trainer Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 o'clock. I have physio every Friday at 2:30. Make sure my body stays in shape. I don't drink alcohol. I haven't since 1998. I do not eat meat. I do eat fish. I buy 6 identical blue suits every 2 years. I've worn the same button-down shirt that Carrie gets made in India since 2002. I only wear a solid blue tie. I have 3 dozen runners in boxes ready to go because I do not like to change brands. I eat 3 meals a day, 365 days a year in restaurants. They say I'm extremely OCD. I kept the same table at the Four Seasons for lunch for 15 to 20 years. They've closed. I left 6 months early over to the Wedgwood so that I could have a table. You know, these are the parts that I believe you. I live in public therapy, but I've had the same psychiatrist since 1992. Lynn is a business coach, but we talk 48 out of 52 Sundays a year. Lynn's moved to Kelowna. We talk from 7 o'clock till 8:15 every week. Can I do it without her? Sure. But can I do it better with her? Yes. And I think that we don't spend enough time looking after ourselves. And I think that's the greatest thing that we can do, because then I'm healthier and better for my family. I've had the same CFO, Larry Van Hatten, beside me and mentor Chris for 35 years. Look at, we're sitting here. Tracy's been in my life
40 years, introduced to you by Kirk Taylor.
Kirk Taylor, who's probably on here and handles real estate for
Richmond.
City of Richmond. Kirk introduced us, and we've all stayed friends all the way through. But the transactional side is not what's held it together. It's the non-transactional
But there's a real
side.
theme of discipline. Was it always there?
Yeah, from the 66-foot law, from day one. You know, they say with children, the biggest stress relief for a child is to eat every day at 5 o'clock. But why are we telling you this? Maybe just to show that it's okay to be quirky, and it's okay to have habits that others don't, because that defines you. But it's been my survival. The miracle is I didn't burn out. Maybe I have, and you're all just humoring me, but I haven't burned out.
Let's jump to Bobisms and go through the things that have created the guiding light for you, and how you run your life, and how you've tried to run the business, and those 4 or 5, we call them Bobisms, that I think you stole them from somewhere because they're too good. But
I shouldn't have to look at notes, but you know, we run the company on whoever gets to the truth first wins. It sounds, trust me, I'm honest, but no, it's once you've told the truth, once you've told somebody that their home is worth 1.6 million, they want to list at 1.8, 1.9. You've given them the cautionary tale. You've told them the truth. So when you come with an offer of 1.65, they can't say, why'd you change your mind? You didn't just give a high price to get the listing. And I think that getting the facts out, and you don't have to be angry or yell to get the truth out. It's just the facts. And then we run the whole company on, I'm not allowed to be me unless I allow you to be you. And that's not to allow white supremacy. It's to really understand that we're all culturally different. We have to accept each other, diversity, etc. But we can't scream, I want to be an individual, but you're not allowed to be. So that's been foundational to the growth of the company. And I can pick 25-year employees that, because of that, is why they're with the company. And another one that I use a lot is, we never mourn the relationship we lost. We mourn the relationship we imagined. It applies to our personal life. We're never upset about the mean person that we broke up with or got out of our life, but we are very upset about the way that it should have been. We're never upset about, shouldn't be upset about a business deal that went bad. We're really upset about the way we imagined it would go. I imagined that stock would triple. It didn't. It was delisted. And we get upset about what we imagine rather than what is. And it's an adage that we really live by a lot, and something that sort of is a thread that ties everything we're talking about today is anybody can get in the race, anybody, but it's very difficult to stay in the race. You know, Tracy and I are an example that maybe we've overstayed our welcome and you're just here to get a PVP point, but we feel good doing it. With direct mail, the first 3 times I sent it out, nothing happened. But then all of a sudden, oh my God, this guy again. We talked at breakfast that I've never sent a calendar out in my life, but my generation of realtors always sent out a calendar. And I remember Mr. and Mrs. Campbell in the 2900 block of East Pender behind Bell Funeral Home called me and said, "You've sent us calendars for years, get over here, we're going to sell the house." And they opened, in old homes, there was an ironing board. They opened the ironing board closet and there was Gord Owen's calendar. And I felt like shit, but I took the listing. But it's not doing what everybody else does. And anybody can get in the game, but very few will stay in the race. But
we're getting tight for time. Have you got any more? Because I've got another question. I want to get to what's happening.
Okay, just the most important one in our life is the one that Miyako gave me when we opened the company. When we opened the brokerage firm in about '88. And she found a saying, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but it's a man that adheres to a position previously stated when times change is an idiot. We're all computers. New knowledge comes in, it should reinforce the path we're on, or it should cause us to change our path. And we're all so wanting yesterday back. COVID's an example, yesterday's gone. Nothing's going to be the same as we come out of this. The shift has happened forever. But this, a man that adheres to a position previously stated when times change is a fool, is an idiot, has really stuck with me, and we've kept ourselves very nimble because of that statement that Miyako found.
So looking forward, Rain Man, what do you see in real estate?
First of all, nobody knows what Rain Man means unless you're 90. But
going forward, Vancouver real estate, where's it all going?
So this ties into why even stay? Why do we take the risk of sending 100 employees home so that we're still standing as we come out of COVID, whatever that means? But you know, so what I'm watching, what the company is watching, is we're watching populations, immigration, jobs, aging baby boomer money, and the politicizing of density within our mayor's councils and cities. And what we have to understand is immigration has been suppressed, schools have been closed, students haven't been here. But when I take John Shirley's story and you see that it's too hard to get ethnicity into America, and who wants to live there if you're not so-called white, which I don't like the term, but so as we see immigration now come back post-COVID, 350,000, now 411, 421, 431,000 in the ensuing years. That's real people coming to Canada. I can tie that to, I had a call with David Eby's deputy minister, and as we're talking, she put down her pen and said, "You're telling me that we need 100,000 homes in the next 15 years? We'll never get the labor to build it. We can't execute." And we forget those things. If all the density came up at once, we can't build it. But when I see 11,000 Amazon jobs coming to the post office, when I see Spotify making this their head office, when I see heads of Google and heads of major tech companies buying luxury homes in Vancouver, when we see, when we do rent-ups of buildings, and we see how many American passports are renting here, look out, we are absolutely not prepared. But the number that I have watched since 2006 is if you're 55 years of age and older, you're sitting right now on $293 billion in clear title housing in our region. That's just of 55 years of age and older. And that 293 billion was only worth 66 billion 15 years ago in 2006. This is found money tax-free. Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government socialized, we might tax your principal residence. They socialized, we might put a wealth tax on. So you're seeing, and they socialized that we're going to change capital gains. So my over 55-year-old is running scared, and you're going to see the transfer of wealth by the living rather than by the deceased. As we come out of COVID, that money is coming in wheelbarrows full to their children and grandchildren, because before they get taxed on it, they would rather see their children and grandchildren get it rather than for taxes. Prior to the election, Trudeau, again, wasted our money because he doesn't have a majority. So we live in indecision again. Prior to the election, a lot of people transferred a number of their investments thinking that the capital gains threat was coming. Jagmeet Singh said that we should probably put an 80% tax on anybody that earns over $1 million. These things haven't happened. But when you see a $500 billion federal debt and 10, 15 billion per province, no one's talking about it because they all want to get reelected, but we're going to have to pay that off. And I argue with our Intel team that this is the first time we're going to see zero interest rates with inflation, because nobody's written that book. But when I look at the aging baby boomer money, when I look at the real jobs, and just look at how we handled COVID, we may not like a lot of things that happened, but we are in such a better place than so many other places in the world. We have drinking water. We have a lovely climate. We have amazing schools. If you have discretionary money, this is one of the places on the planet that you're going to want to live. When you look at, it's 30 years earlier than we thought, the takeover of Hong Kong. Hong Kong's starting to put in rules that you can't show visible success. I also, I have a theory that for all of us, that if you have a voice, if you have power, if you have visible success, you're not going to be celebrated anymore for that. You better be showing what you're doing, giving back to the common good and where you're helping mankind. Otherwise, you're going to be attacked somewhere. But I'm wandering all over, but it's good. But these are the things, real immigration, real jobs, and the politicizing of housing. Our mayors and councils get elected and unelected based on supplying density in a neighborhood. Because you're only elected for a 4-year term. So you spend the first 6 months figuring out the lies you told everybody. And then you spend the last 18 months putting on a Teflon suit so nothing sticks to you, so you get reelected. So really, during your 2-year term, you don't make a lot of long-term decisions because it's political risk. Everything going on out there is, can I get elected? The Republicans can't dump Trump, or they only have a 35% base. Like, it's toxic. It's just to get reelected. So we're at a very tough crossroads. But, as Tracy and I talked earlier, during COVID, look what happened to housing. Yet every time we used to come out in the media, underwritten by data and talk positive, they go, he just wants more condos to sell. Well, how's it working for you now? We've had a Liberal government, we've had an NDP government, and we're in shit. Housing is getting very expensive. And then I'll shut up. But after COVID, so we're designing buildings differently. It was all going to be WeWork, and we're going to lay around on couches, and we're all going to talk to each other, and it was going to be live Tinder. Well, that's gone. Now we're giving you 10 separate offices. Nobody wants to touch the elevator keys. We're all very sensitive of how many people are in the elevator, and those things aren't going to go away quickly. But if you look at a 500 square foot 1-bedroom in a pre-sale, downtown's all approaching new buildings, 2,000 plus a foot. So the bottom of the building is $1 million for a 1-bedroom. The top of the building in Surrey is approaching 1,000 a foot. For that 500 square feet is 500,000. When we did Woodward's, with a line that if you've lived in Vancouver all your life, you look at the Woodward's district as questionable and forgotten. But if you're from anywhere else, you look at it as emerging. And when you look at Surrey, it is the center of it all. It has transit. It's just on a threshold, and it can supply some of the housing needs that Vancouver can't. You know, Vancouver has 25% of the region's population, but 34% of the region's jobs. So we track all this, and I know I ramble on, but these are the reasons we stay, is we have underlying data that shows that we are going to be okay. I would love to be the guy to go on the front page of the newspaper and say it's over because of A, B, and C, and I can't find that A, B, and C. So we're staying, but we want to stay very, very measured as Bob and Tracy, as a company. And how hot is it that after 46 years I get to talk? We think there's 1,000 people on, but maybe there's 14 left. I don't know. I don't know.
Just to touch on COVID for, we talked about this as well, like this whole term of post-COVID, I'm not sure that we're going to be post-COVID in our lifetime. There is going to be residual of whatever COVID has recreated for our lifestyle and our industry. But to your point earlier, Bob, the fact that if you talked to me back in March of 2020, when COVID first really got hold of the world, I would have bet real estate, all hard assets would have just crashed. Everybody would have just hunkered down. And it was anything but that. It was just try and buy a boat, try and buy a new car, try and buy housing in general, let alone Vancouver, is just skyrocketed through this.
Yeah, and once prices go up, it's really tough to get them down. But when you marry labor shortage, when you marry in ships that go one way empty and come back full, that is a horrendous cost to our supply chain. And our supply chain is not going to be corrected quickly. And then we get a Delta variant, a new variant. I was in Switzerland last week, and it took 3 days preparation before going so that I could get a COVID passport before I got there. And there is no tolerance, like zero tolerance for the no mask. You're not even walking in the grocery store without showing that, no, I'm double vaccinated. But, it's controversial today that all children are going to have to wear masks in elementary and high schools, but decisions are being made that have long-term effects, not to mention how we're going to pay off the debt. So they can't let interest rates fly when you owe $500 billion. So but are we in a constant pandemic life now? We just get used to it. We all adjust. Chris and I argue. My son's really my dad now. But Chris and I argue that I say there's no plan B. It's just plan A modified. He says there's a plan B. I don't think it is. Our new plan A modified is we're living in a pandemic-y world. Might not be post-pandemic, but it's pandemic-y.
Yeah.
So, Jeannie, do you have questions?
Yeah, Jenny, I've got some more stuff, or we can toss it to you, whatever you think is better for the last few minutes.
Definitely got questions. So if you want to sit through them, I have to tell you, I've got questions. I've got so many compliments. People are really, really enjoying this conversation. So thank you.
Well, I can cancel therapy for the week.
You said public therapy, right?
Yeah.
I have to tell you, this has been so good. Talk about an inside look at determination, having goals, the challenges of figuring out if you're going to take risk or be disciplined. I mean, I've learned, I've laughed, I've gotten chills. And like I said, a lot of others too, because I'm reading the comments as they come in. People are really, really thrilled. Thank you. But I do also have questions. So
I understand how privileged I am.
Yeah.
And even do this. And my worry is it comes across as boasting, but we're here to show leadership. So we made the decision to do it. And thank you.
Well, that's what's been projected, because people are seeing it just like that. So let me start with these questions because people want to pick your brain. What do you think about density? You did talk about these things, but I want to make sure these people see that we're seeing their questions. What do you think about density? And do you think detached housing will become old school?
Well, 56% of our land mass is single family housing. I've always said if I owned Vancouver, this was sort of in our 2015 speech to UDI, that I would take from, let's pick Main Street to Boundary, from 33rd to Powell. And I would rezone the entire area to townhouse. But we would only densify 5 or 6% per year. So land doesn't go up because, oh, next year I'll be able to get townhouse land. Neighbors have certainty that they know where values are going. We have some certainty of housing stock. But we need density. And the other thing is more people living on less land is green. But we can't have a 60-story high-rise next to a single-family home. And one of the problems I saw with the Cambie corridor is they densified Cambie, 25th and 49th and 41st, the arterials. And then 7 years, 10 years later, they go, now we're going to densify the next phase. So land just skyrocketed. Yet had they done it all at once, we'd go, oh, I don't have to panic. It's November. I'll get in the next batch next year. And I find that we don't offer certainty, but it's been so politicized. And as we're seeing the Broadway corridor transit coming, I can now put in housing stock without parking. You know, Marine Gateway, when Tracy and I did it, it was 25% no parking stalls. Everybody said we're crazy. Yeah. But and so I went to the city. I remember I said to Trish French, so why don't you bonus the developer $10,000 a door for not putting in parking? And she goes, no, he should give us $20,000 a door for the savings. And I go, no, we're never going to solve it this way. But we don't look at things holistically enough on density. But it's a science. We know immigration, we know population, we know jobs. So marry those incomes to housing stock, but for the region. And actually, I think David Eby is doing a phenomenal job. When I see what he just did out in Port Moody, he went out and fought for, I think there's 400 social housing units and 2,000 market units. That's housing stock my region needs. And you can get to Port Moody without a bridge.
Yeah, there you go. So, okay, so sticking with politicians, next question from Matt. What do you think of Prime Minister Trudeau proposing auctions for real estate sales?
We're Canadian, we're too insecure. It doesn't work. It does not work because we'll think that it's being set up. An Australian company came here and tried it once. Actually, they came to Surrey to do auctions, and we were doing a building called the Stanley. And I opened a week before them, and my whole campaign was below auction prices. We sold out the building, and they were a miserable failure. I think that Trudeau's looking for political jewelry. You know, let's ban foreign money. Well, but let's allow 11,000 Amazon jobs, but you can't buy something. So our industry doesn't have to fight for that one, because every town in Canada that was hoping foreign money would invest in manufacturing and jobs, they'll fight that one. We don't need to.
There you go. All right. So then, with the advent of Zillow and Zillow having a price to buy any home, how do you see real estate in BC heading?
That's an American model. I think that has a chance to work. Give me $10, Chris. I bet Chris the dog would bark. And then
so I think with Zillow, it goes back to, you have to understand when you arrive at somebody's home, they have all of that readily available, free appraisal, almost close knowledge. So what are you going to do for them? What is your database? What is your advertising? Where do you see things going? Which is why, you know, my developers need data. We can't sit in a boardroom and go, is this project 800 million? I have a gut feeling 1 bedrooms. We did that in the 90s and they believed us.
It doesn't work now.
But you can't. So everything has to be researched. But look at what Zillow offers and then drill down and absolutely regionalize it and let people know, do you know that your neighborhood school specializes in autism? Do you know that the French immersion down the block is the worst in the city. And
Mhm.
like that, where do you capitalize? And where are you? If you're not a value add, they may as well hire their paper boy.
Yeah, okay. Different direction now. Considering what's happening in China with Evergrande and uncertainties, what is your projection for Vancouver market over next year, 2 and 3 years?
Well, I think a lot of the money moved to Singapore when the riot started and before. Real money saw what was happening, but that authoritative state that is coming into Hong Kong and China tempering it back. I mean, we're seeing new rules that you brought money out of China and you've invested in a great real estate development here, but that money's not being repatriated. So we're now going to tax you on it. So I think it's, Canada taxes on income, American taxes on citizenship, but we're seeing China tax on worldwide assets and income. So whoa, it's over? No, that money, if 1% of that money wants to move here, we can't handle it. And I think that when money is not allowed to, when money's allowed to flow, it flows, but when it's not allowed to flow, it really flows because it finds ways to get to where they want to, they want to be.
Capital. Yeah.
And investing in, yes, taxes are tough in Canada, but what an amazing place to live. I don't know why my associates and some people go offshore and look for all these schemes and to give up the lifestyle that we have here. I always tell everybody, you can't get a dinner reservation in Vancouver after 9:30 because we're not because we're full, we're closed. It's just a nice, peaceful place to live.
I see a couple of people are asking how much longer we might be going. So I'll just let everybody know because we've talked about it internally. We've got a few extra minutes for anybody that can stick around. We want to try to answer as many questions as possible.
And if you stay, you get one more PDP credit.
Don't believe him on that. Okay, so here we go. I'm reading verbatim here. I haven't actually read this ahead of time. So regarding having knowledge that underwrites our opinions, with easy access to almost all real estate knowledge, question just disappeared, now available freely, give us an example of the kind of knowledge that would be something that the competing realtor doesn't have, assuming that they aren't just lazy.
Old-fashioned real estate, if you stay very, very curious and you're using 6 comparables when you go to list something, have you actually phoned those 6 and had somebody say, well, the reason we got that is they included their Honda Civic and it's probably the nicest basement suite I've ever seen in the world. Because it's not all apples to apples. Yes, it's built in 1940 and yes, it has the same lot size, but try and find out intimate knowledge. But I think some of the knowledge that we're talking about even here that, we tend to just carry it as second skin, and Tracy calls me Rain Man, but I just have the ability to memorize data. But I think to really understand, well, the reason that UBC hasn't been selling well is the schools are closed. And then where's the easy research to go find what does that school population look like as it comes back? How many classes are going to remain online? How many aren't? And you're arriving with regional intimate knowledge. And sometimes it's not the knowledge or the graph that counts. The fact that you have it. We go into so many meetings where we have all this data and they don't look at it, but they might have.
But they also, they expect us to interpret it for them. It's one thing to just spill it on the table, but if you can't interpret it correctly and informatively, then it's not really worth anything. You just impress them with a bunch of graphs. But I think if you can, in layman's terms, for the most part, describe what the data is telling you, you've got a leg up. And there's so many data points that are available to everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so given this data, given all the facts and everything you've said about Vancouver real estate, what do you think the price is in the next 5 to 10 years?
Going up.
I'm not selling.
I think entitlements are so difficult to get processed in any municipality. It is just supply and demand. It's straightforward. There is a massive demand, short of the fatigue of people trying to buy things. And there is just not a lot of inventory coming to the market. We brought on King George Hub last November, 2 towers, 886 homes. And I told Andrew Grant at PCI, like, we're going to power through this. It's going to take a while. That's a lot of homes. We sold every single home in 8 months, 886 homes in 8 months.
But the thing is, the cost of entry is so high for the development community now with the oversight. Construction costs are up, labor is so scarce. And you look at Surrey, they just put a $30 CAC in per square foot. So real estate has to go up $30 a foot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not even a conversation. But I don't see oversupply anywhere. If no foreign buyers are allowed to buy, that over $15 million market will have a temporary slowdown. But no one's creating an abundance of that. It's just that those houses will have to sell for a little bit less or wait.
And no one feels bad.
That end of the pyramid. But the under $1,000 per square foot as you go east Van and out, it's insatiable. It's absolutely insatiable. And rental stock with our land costs, you're going to see as the jobs come back that we're going to see increased rents. Can't stop.
Okay. How about from Grace? We are still developing and building. What do you think about the public infrastructure? We see very little money spent on expanding roads and building more roads, or expanding roads, I guess, and building more roads.
So Vancouver?
Yeah,
It's not built for it.
Yeah, even I don't know where the new roads would be, but maintaining what we have. I mean, Vancouver is not as pretty as it used to be. The maintenance, the looking after it, I think these are things that we should bring up with our politicians. I mean, our office and our museum is in Chinatown on Pender Street. And that area is 3 times as bad as it was when we bought the building in 2004. You see what's happened to Granville Street. But I think the problem is that CACs and all the development money has been used just to shore up and run a city rather than raise taxes orderly. And no mayor wants to raise taxes double digit. So we're all paying for the past sins of not raising orderly so that past politicians could get reelected. It's toxic.
Yeah, it feeds right into everything you were saying earlier. A little bit of different direction here. Do you think that BCFSA, now with this amalgamation, will change the real estate business?
BC
FSA, so the BC Financial Securities.
FinTrack. I just always had a naive belief. They told me when GST came in that I should quit, it's over. But as long as we're all treated the same, then that's the rules to entry. And if you are selling to drug dealers and bags of cash, your business is not going to do as well. But if you're doing normal business, my sister said to me the other day, I don't want to be fingerprinted at the border. Or I don't want that. I said, why? What are you going to do illegal in your life? Like, you're 70 years old. What's going to happen? So I think that, we had a thing in here that I believe 4% of the world are bad guys. And I usually use a different word. And we spend 96% of our time working our way around. So these laws are coming in because of the 4%.
Yeah.
And we're just all, as long as we all have to have the same burden, then that's the cost of entry. Or you can't buy in BC or Canada.
Yeah.
So I've never looked at any of these things as onerous. It's just as long as it's happening to all of us. And we take a breather and we're mad and we're Canadian, we're passive aggressive complainers. And then you go, okay, that's what it is.
Okay, thank you for that. Back to condos. Do you not think a glut of condos is here / coming, giving the huge unprecedented amount of recent current projected supply, especially given the current left-wing politicians' seemingly insatiable appetite for income from development fees and selling density, plus proposed increase in capital gain tax, the EHT tax, the FBT tax, and on and on and on.
So when I was a child, even I used to hear about how all the doctors would build apartment buildings. And then as I started to pay attention, coming into real estate, and then they would sell them and they didn't have to pay taxes as long as they rolled it over. It's sort of like a 401 in America. Or 501. And then they changed that. So nobody sold their buildings. And when you tamper with a free market system, so capital gains changes, we all just stop selling. So prices go up. It doesn't all tip to, oh my God, it's all going to flood out onto the market. I want to pay higher taxes to sell this condo. You just go, you know what, I'm going to hold it. But where is our rental supply coming from? It's coming from project marketers and our developers. Mm-hmm. And that's, we have less than 1% vacancy. In any other city, you have huge rental companies and online and gouging to find you a place. We don't have that. We have Craigslist. So it levels so quickly, and that's what the internet and social media has done, is we know very quickly if there's oversupply in any one sector. And banks gave Tracy and I a career when they said you had to sell 60% of your building because we'll give you we won't give you construction financing. So those thresholds to entry to get the oversupply are so high. And if the cost doesn't make sense to build a rental building other than for a pension fund, no one's going to build it.
Right.
So we don't see that gross oversupply. And if we pay attention to under 1,000 a foot, there's an insatiable demand.
All right, there's actually many more questions, but I'm going to ask one more, and then maybe we can talk you into a part 2, but we'll do that offline. So the next question.
Good deal.
The next question is our final question. Do you think the city will eventually stratify all detached lots and allow laneway to be sold for all lots?
Well, I'll guess what they're getting at is neighbor or is laneway housing.
Yeah, can you carve it off?
So we say, let's build laneway housing, and your daughter and your son-in-law go spend $400,000 to $600,000, whatever it is, and they build a laneway house. And then they can't stand their mother-in-law, and they all get in a fight. And what do we do now? We got to sell the whole thing. So the fear is, if you strata title it, that $2 million lot is not worth 4, but it's probably worth 2.8. But we've created affordable small lots. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to take the risk, but I think that we should go all the way with it. But maybe it should be, you can't just build one laneway house, you have to build 2, so that we're actually causing supply, and we can keep families in our neighborhoods.
Okay, I think that is a great way to end this.
So I had one last.
Okay, excellent.
I sort of is, and I think it's for all of us, and especially as we come out of COVID and people are looking for softer sides of life and how to do business, and they don't want to be hammered into a deal, and in maintaining relationships. And it's Maya Angelou. I wish I had the ability to think of these things, but I've learned that some people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And you guys made us feel good being here and listening, and we just hope just a little bit that came across, that the business isn't as harsh as we all make it out to be, and the media makes it out to be, and there's so many wonderful people in this business. So that's it.
I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much. We were so appreciative, and clearly the members are too. If you could see all the comments, they're quite pleased and appreciative.
Thank you. It's an honor.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll be talking about more later with you guys. But before now, we're going to tell the members before they go, we do have feedback form that we'd like for you to complete. You'll see it when you log off. It's going to be a pop-up to our event survey. Your feedback's invaluable. It's what makes us or helps us determine what to plan for you. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to mention a few of our upcoming events. On October 14th, we have Become a Top Agent with Social Media. Later in October, we've got on October 28th, we have Tri-Cities Municipal Update, so 2021 and beyond. On November 2nd, we've got related to strata's boundaries between strata corporations and short-term rentals. And then another in November, another municipal update, this one for the North Shore. So thank you very much for spending some time with us this morning. Hopefully you'll find some of these other events interesting for you as well. And thanks for tuning in.